The old machine was supposed to be dead, scrapped, forgotten, left to rust in the corner of a dusty storeroom. But under the steady hands of a man nobody saw coming, it sparked, whirred, and came roaring back to life. In that moment, Andre Collins wasn't just fixing a machine, he was rewriting his future, and nobody at Stratton Industries was ready for what came next. You ever see someone doing something they weren't qualified for, and yet, they were brilliant at it anyway? That's what happened one random Tuesday night at Stratton Industries in Fort Worth, Texas. It was close to 9 p.m. when Andre Collins shoved open the heavy back door leading into the cluttered old storeroom behind the shipping docks. He still wore his dark blue maintenance coveralls, sleeves rolled up, a tired but determined look on his face, the kind of look you only see on someone working not out of obligation, but out of a quiet, stubborn love for the craft. The building was silent now, the buzz of the day reduced to the occasional hum of an old vending machine down the hall and the soft crackle of a failing fluorescent bulb. Andre moved past piles of forgotten inventory, dusty shelves loaded with discarded parts, and bins overflowing with tangled wires. To anyone else, this was just corporate junk. But to Andre, this was a playground. In the farthest corner sat the SX400, the company's old automated sorting unit, half covered by a torn tarp and a thick coat of dust. Engineers had declared it dead months ago, labeling it a resource sink. Andre wasn't supposed to touch it. Wasn't paid to think about it. But he did. Every night after his shift, little by little, he had been picking at the machine's guts, tinkering, testing, learning. No manuals. No YouTube videos. Just curiosity, patience, and hands that had been taking things apart since he was 8 years old in his granddad's garage. He laid out his modest toolkit like a surgeon prepping for operation: socket wrench, multimeter, soldering pen, a battered old LED flashlight. Beside him on the concrete floor, a flattened cardboard box served as his schematic, sketched with messy pencil lines, arrows, and question marks only he could understand. He crouched beside the sorting unit, whispering encouragement under his breath. "Come on, old girl. I know you got more in you." The machine sputtered, groaned, then fell silent again. Andre didn't get frustrated. He grinned, wiped sweat from his forehead, and got back to work. Meanwhile, on the other side of the building, Grant Whitaker, CEO of Stratton Industries, had just pulled into the executive parking lot. He wasn't supposed to be here either. A dinner meeting had run late, and he'd realized he'd left his laptop sitting open on his desk, a mistake he couldn't afford with an early flight to New York the next morning. As Grant walked through the dimly lit corridors, he noticed something odd. A door near the loading dock was slightly ajar, spilling light into the otherwise dark hallway. He paused, wary. Most cleaning crews were long gone by now. Curiosity got the better of him. He crept closer, careful with each step, and that's when he heard it, a mechanical whirring, rhythmic and determined, unlike anything he expected. Peeking through the cracked door, Grant saw a figure hunched over a battered machine. He leaned in, just enough to see more clearly. It wasn't security. It wasn't a technician. It was a maintenance guy, sleeves rolled up, hands steady, expression laser-focused. Andre adjusted a coil, tapped a connector with the butt of his screwdriver, and muttered, "Voltage is steady, let's see if you can dance." Suddenly, the SX400 jerked to life. One cautious motion. Then another. Then smoother, an old mechanical arm lifting a part, scanning it, sorting it into a bin. Then again. And again. Grant blinked. That machine was supposed to be a corpse. Yet here it was, moving, working, responding, because of a man in a uniform most executives didn't even look twice at. Grant stayed in the shadows longer than he intended, watching. Not angry. Not even confused. Just amazed. Something about it felt rare, real, the kind of raw talent you don't find in resumes or glossy pitches. Andre didn't notice him at first, too deep into the delicate dance of circuits and code. He had jury-rigged a control panel from a cracked tablet. And a salvaged circuit board, making the impossible seem effortless. "All right, girl," he whispered, flicking a switch. The sorting unit buzzed louder, sorting multiple items in rapid succession, faster and cleaner than anything the company had running upstairs. Grant exhaled sharply, and that's when Andre noticed him. Andre froze, rag in hand, the color draining from his face. Their eyes met. 1 heartbeat. 2. "Mr. Whitaker," Andre said, voice rough and low. Grant stepped into the room, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "Didn't mean to startle you." Andre straightened up quickly, wiping his hands nervously. "Sorry, sir. I didn't mean to break any rules. Grant cut him off gently, pointing at the machine. "You fixed that?" Andre hesitated, unsure if this was a trap. "Yes, sir. Been working on it after hours. Just messing around, I guess." Grant's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in calculation. "And it's fully operational?" "Mostly," Andre admitted. "Still a few hiccups in the scan relay, but the main drive's steady. Rewired the board, replaced the power unit from the return shelf. I know I probably should have gotten clearance, and the engineering team said it was unfixable," Grant said quietly. He stepped closer, inspecting the old sorter now humming smoothly, doing in minutes what teams of credentialed engineers had given up on. "You an engineer, Collins?" Andre swallowed. "No, sir. Not officially. Studied electrical engineering for 3 years at Prairie View A&M. Had to drop out. Family stuff. Been working ever since." Grant folded his arms, studying him, not just the man, but the story written in his posture, his careful work, the confidence of his hands. "Why keep trying to fix something nobody asked you to?" Andre shrugged. "Didn't seem right to let it die if it still had fight left." For a long moment, Grant said nothing. Then he smiled, small but genuine. "Can you be here at 8 a.m. tomorrow? 5th floor conference room." Andre's throat went dry. "I'm on shift at 7. I'll have someone cover you. Just be there." Andre nodded slowly, mind racing faster than any motor he'd ever repaired. Grant turned to leave but paused at the doorway, glancing back over his shoulder. "Nice work, Collins. Real nice work." Then he was gone. Andre stood there, still staring at the humming sorter, feeling like the ground beneath him had shifted in a way he couldn't name. That night, he didn't sleep much. Lying on the creaky mattress in his 1-bedroom apartment off Rosedale Street, staring at the cracked ceiling, Andre kept replaying everything: the machine, the CEO, the invitation. Every instinct in him warred between excitement and fear. What if it was a fluke? What if tomorrow, everything fell apart? Before the sun was even up, Andre was awake, ironing his coveralls twice, shining his boots until they looked almost new, trimming his beard with trembling hands. He drove his aging Chevy S10 to Stratton Industries, arriving so early he had to wait 30 minutes in the parking lot. Warehouse workers drifted in with fast food bags and half-finished coffee cups. Office folks marched past, eyes glued to their phones. Nobody noticed the maintenance guy sitting quietly behind the wheel, hard hammering. But today wasn't like any other day. At exactly 8:01 a.m., Andre stood in front of the 5th floor conference room's glass doors. His reflection stared back at him, creased coveralls, calloused hands, a man completely out of place among the pressed slacks and crisp polos beyond the glass. He swallowed hard. Then he pushed open the door. The door clicked shut behind Andre Collins with a soft whisper, but the room had already fallen silent the moment he stepped through. He could feel their eyes, sharp, skeptical, measuring, taking in the dark blue coveralls, the steel-toed boots, the calloused hands gripping a battered notepad like a lifeline. Around the long glass table sat the engineering team, crisp in polos and pressed slacks, flipping through tablets and notebooks, casting glances that said everything before a single word was spoken. Andre knew he looked out of place. He felt it in the way the carpet seemed too thick under his boots, and the way the air smelled faintly of coffee and ambition. But he also knew he had a right to be here, whether they saw it yet or not. At the head of the table stood Grant Whitaker, Stratton Industries CEO, tie loosened but posture sharp, radiating the kind of quiet authority that demanded attention without raising his voice. He didn't waste time. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting clean across the room, "this is Andre Collins. He's a member of our maintenance team. Last night, he brought the SX400 back online, a unit we wrote off 3 months ago as beyond repair." A murmur rippled through the room, disbelief threaded with irritation. Grant ignored it. Andre's not an engineer. He doesn't have a degree hanging on his wall. What he has is a working machine, and in this business, results matter more than resumes. He turned to Andre, giving him a small nod. "Show them." Andre swallowed hard, feeling the weight of every eye in the room pin him to the spot, but he stepped forward. His hands were steady as he placed a cracked tablet on the table and pulled up the custom interface he'd built from scratch. The screen flickered to life, showing live footage from the storeroom, the SX400 sorting parts faster and cleaner than the new models upstairs. Gasps and muttered curses escaped before anyone could catch themselves. Andre cleared his throat. "The main board was fried," he said, voice even but low, "and the primary sensor was misaligned. I rebuilt a basic control system using recycled components, rerouted the power flow to bypass the dead circuits, and recalibrated the mechanical arm timing using manual feedback loops." He flipped through hand-sketched diagrams, notes written in a tight, efficient scrawl, explaining each step without arrogance, just clarity. Some of the engineers leaned in, curiosity lighting their faces. Others, like Darren Pike, lean, mid-40s, expensive watch flashing under the lights, sat back with crossed arms and narrowed eyes. When Andre finished, Grant looked around the table. "Questions?" The room hesitated, balancing on the edge of old assumptions and new reality. Darren was the first to break the silence. "So," he said, voice dripping with polite skepticism, "you cobbled this together from junk?" Andre nodded once. "Yes, sir." "And you expect us to believe it's sustainable?" Andre kept his tone neutral. "The system's running at 98% efficiency. Better than factory spec. There's a full log of the output if you'd like to review it." Darren smirked, but Grant cut in before he could press further. "We're not here to debate credentials," he said sharply. "We're here to recognize solutions." Collins saw an opportunity and took it. He turned back to Andre. "Effective immediately, you're on special assignment under my office. Temporary, at first. I want you observing the system's teams, offering insights where you can. We'll see where it leads." Andre blinked, the words sinking slower than he could process. He nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir." The meeting adjourned with the scraping of chairs and the low rumble of conversation. As people filed out, a few gave Andre polite nods, others didn't even bother to hide their skepticism. Darren brushed past him with a tight, humorless smile. "Good luck," he said under his breath, voice laced with something that wasn't kindness. Andre stayed behind, heart pounding, watching Grant gather his tablet. "You did good in there," Grant said quietly. "But understand something, this isn't going to be easy. You shook their foundation. Some people don't like being reminded that titles don't guarantee competence." Andre nodded slowly. "I'm used to being underestimated." Grant's mouth twitched in what might have been the beginning of a grin. "Good. You're going to need that." The next few days were a blur. Instead of pushing a mop or unclogging drains, Andre sat in on engineering meetings, absorbing everything like a sponge. He listened more than he spoke, learning the systems, the jargon, the delicate politics that flowed under every project discussion. He sketched wiring diagrams on scrap paper during lunch breaks, rebuilt a faulty sensor controller without being asked, and quietly corrected an error in a conveyor calibration script that had stumped a senior engineer for 2 weeks. Word began to spread. The new guy. The maintenance man. The one who fixed the dead sorter. Some were curious. A few were impressed. And then there was Darren, who watched every move Andre made with the cold, calculating gaze of a man waiting for a mistake he could pounce on. Andre didn't give him one. Instead, he kept his head down and kept producing results. But not everyone was ready to applaud. At a Thursday team huddle, Darren struck again, this time wrapped in civility. "Interesting approach to the SX400, he said loudly enough for the whole team to hear, but let's be honest, it's one thing to fix a relic. It's another to innovate at scale. That takes more than intuition. It takes real engineering." The words hung heavy in the room. Andre could feel the heat rising to his ears but stayed calm. "I never claimed to be a replacement," he said, voice steady. "I just fixed what needed fixing." Darren gave a tight, patronizing nod, but the damage was intended more for the audience than for Andre himself. Grant wasn't at that meeting. But someone else spoke up, Camille Brooks, a young systems engineer who had been quietly observing from the sidelines. "Maybe we need a little more fixing around here," she said lightly, but her eyes met Andre's and held. Darren didn't reply. He didn't have to. His posture said enough, this wasn't over. Later that afternoon, Grant called Andre into his office. No fanfare, just a short, sharp meeting. "You're doing fine," he said, voice low. "But understand something, Collins. When you're the outsider, when you're the one who wasn't invited through the front door, you have to be twice as good for half the credit. You up for that?" Andre didn't hesitate. "Yes, sir." "Good," Grant said. "Because whether they know it or not, they need you." That night, alone in his small apartment, Andre sat at the kitchen table staring at a blank piece of paper, a pencil resting against his calloused fingers. He could still hear Darren's voice in his head, still feel the weight of those skeptical glances. But underneath that, there was something stronger, something louder, the hum of the SX400 coming back to life under his hands, the look on Grant Whitaker's face when it worked, the quiet nods from Camille and a few others who had started seeing him not as a janitor, but as a builder, a creator, a mind worth listening to. Andre picked up the pencil and began sketching, ideas for system upgrades, improvements no one had thought about yet. He wasn't just fixing broken things anymore. He was building something new. He was building his place in a world that never thought to leave the door open for him. And he wasn't about to let anyone close it now. Andre Collins didn't know when exactly the shift happened, only that one morning he walked into Stratton Industries and realized people were seeing him differently. It wasn't in the big things, there were no parades, no grand announcements, but in the way conversations paused when he entered a room, in the way engineers he'd barely spoken to now nodded with a kind of quiet respect as he passed by, in the way Camille Brooks would save him a seat in team meetings without needing to be asked. It was subtle, but undeniable, the weight of years of being overlooked slowly peeling away, and yet with every new nod of respect came new pressure heavier than any tool he had ever lifted, because now expectations were tied to his name, and with them, the cold gaze of executives who didn't care how many broken machines he had revived. They cared about numbers, risk, reputation. Still, Andre kept working, kept sketching late into the night in the tiny notebook he always carried, proposing system optimizations, redesigning flowcharts, troubleshooting code without fanfare, and by mid-quarter, the new logistics optimization strategy, largely based on Andre's SX400 rebuild principles, was quietly greenlit for a company-wide rollout across all 5 Stratton distribution centers. Efficiency jumped by 24% in the first month alone, downtime plummeted, shipping errors dropped. And somewhere along the line Andre's name started showing up on internal memos and update reports, not hidden at the bottom in fine print, but highlighted as lead contributor, A. Collins. It felt surreal, reading it at first, sitting in his truck in the parking lot after a long shift, tracing the letters with a calloused thumb like it might vanish if he blinked. He didn't tell anyone, didn't boast or post about it, just quietly clipped the memo into his growing binder of sketches and ideas. The one nobody else knew about but him, but not everyone celebrated the changes, especially not Darren Pike, who now lurked at the edges of meetings like a storm cloud, asking pointed questions about Andre's qualifications in executive calls, warning in hushed conversations that relying on uncredentialed labor could expose Stratton to liability. Andre heard the whispers, felt the chill that sometimes entered the room when he spoke. But he kept his head down and kept building, knowing that results were his only shield, yet even he wasn't immune to the creeping doubts, some nights, staring at the ceiling of his apartment, the old voices would slip through, reminding him he didn't belong, that he was just a janitor pretending to be an engineer. But Camille, bless her, had a way of cutting through the noise. Late one Friday, after a brutal session where Darren had picked apart Andre's schematic revisions in front of the team, she found Andre alone in the back stairwell, slumped against the wall, staring at his boots. She sat down beside him without a word and after a long silence said, "You know, when I first started here, they told me to keep my head down, not to make waves, just blend in." She smiled a little, bitter but proud. "I'm glad you didn't listen." And for the first time in a long time, Andre let himself believe maybe he wasn't alone in this fight. The following Monday, Grant Whitaker called for a full department presentation. Most thought it was another quarterly update, another dry recap of numbers and charts, but when the big screen lit up, it showed side-by-side footage. On the left, Stratton's previous standard sorting system. On the right, the upgraded system built from Andre's redesigns. The difference was night and day: faster sorting, cleaner pathways, reduced errors, increased throughput. The room went still, a kind of stunned silence falling over even Darren Pike as the data stacked higher and higher in Andre's favor. Grant stood at the front, arms crossed, surveying his team with a look that dared them to argue. 3 months ago, Grant said, voice even, this company was prepared to spend 7 figures replacing all our sorting units because we believed there was no way to save the old systems. One man proved otherwise, not with a degree, not with a title, but with skill, tenacity, and vision. He clicked to the next slide, bold letters across the top, new systems development lead, A. Collins. Gasps echoed around the room. Someone clapped, then another, then the whole room. And Andre sat there stunned, trying to find his voice as Grant turned to him with a small, knowing smile. "You ready for this, Collins?" Andre stood slowly, heart hammering so hard he was sure the whole room could hear it. "Yes, sir," he said, steady and clear, and for the first time, he didn't feel like he was speaking as a janitor pretending to belong. He felt like a builder being handed blueprints for a future he had earned. But Darren, ever the thorn, raised his hand, tone carefully polite. "With respect, Mr. Whitaker, should we consider the long-term risks of promoting someone without formal certification to this level of leadership?" Grant didn't even blink. "The only risk here," he said, "is underestimating the people already solving our biggest problems." And with that, the matter was closed. After the meeting, Andre walked back to his new workspace, no longer a makeshift corner in maintenance, but a real desk on the system's development floor, still modest, still cluttered with old cables and scrap parts he couldn't bear to throw away. But it was his, and it felt right. Weeks turned into months, and the upgrades rolled out across all Stratton facilities, each success cementing Andre's reputation not just as a fixer, but as a creator of new standards, new ideas, a quiet revolution built one problem at a time. Still, Andre never forgot where he started, and one rainy evening after a late shift, he found himself wandering back to the old storeroom, the place that smelled like dust and oil and stubborn hope. The SX-400 still stood there, humming quietly under a faded banner someone had hung. "Refit and restored, February 2025. Andre smiled, running his hand along the metal casing, remembering the night it had come back to life. When Grant's voice broke through the silence behind him, "They wanted to move it to the Innovation Center," Grant said, stepping into the room. "Make it a showpiece." He shrugged. "I told them it belongs here, where it was reborn." Andre chuckled softly. "Guess it's not much to look at." "Maybe not," Grant said, "but it's real, and so are you." He paused, then added, "You ever think about finishing your degree?" Andre turned, considering, the weight of the question hanging between them. "I don't need a piece of paper to know what I'm capable of," he said finally, and Grant smiled, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "No, you don't. But if you ever want it, Stratton will pay for it." For a long moment they stood there, two men from different worlds, bound by a shared belief that potential doesn't always come wrapped in diplomas or stitched into expensive suits. Sometimes it's born in cluttered storerooms, under flickering lights, and hands calloused from work that the world never bothered to see. Andre stayed after Grant left, just standing there in the hum and the dust, thinking about every unseen hand still mopping floors, still fixing broken things behind closed doors, and he made himself a promise that no matter how far he climbed, he would never forget the climb itself, because somewhere out there, another Andre Collins was waiting for someone to notice what the world had overlooked, and he Intended to make damn sure they did, because sometimes the greatest revolutions start not with a roar, but with a whisper and the steady hum of a machine someone refused to give up on. In a world obsessed with titles, credentials, and appearances, the story of Andre Collins reminds us that true greatness often comes from the places we least expect. Andre didn't have an engineering degree hanging on his wall. He didn't walk through the front doors of opportunity wearing a tailored suit or carrying a polished resume. What he had was grit, passion, and an unwavering belief that broken things and overlooked people deserve a second chance. Andre's journey teaches us a powerful lesson. What you build, what you fix, what you create with your own two hands matters far more than any label society tries to stick on you. Talent isn't confined to ivory towers or gated institutions. It's alive in every maintenance worker who stays late to solve a problem no one else noticed, and every overlooked dreamer quietly fixing, building, creating when no one is watching. The real mark of ability isn't the degree you hang on your wall, it's the difference you make when you choose not to give up. It's the spark you ignite when you believe in something even after the world has walked away from it. If you're someone working in the shadows, someone feeling unseen or underestimated, I want you to hear this loud and clear. Your worth is not defined by your title or your starting point. It's defined by the work you do, the persistence you show, and the character you build along the way. Keep showing up. Keep learning. Keep proving that greatness often wears coveralls, carries a battered notebook, and dreams quietly under fluorescent lights. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. Here at U.S. Justice Story, we believe in honoring the everyday heroes, the people whose names don't always make headlines but whose actions change lives, companies, and communities. If Andre's story resonated with you, if you've ever been counted out, overlooked, or underestimated, remember, you are not alone. And your story is still being written. If you enjoyed this message, we invite you to subscribe, share this story with someone who needs encouragement, and join us on this journey of uncovering powerful stories of resilience, hope, and quiet triumphs. Your voice matters. Your journey matters. And we're honored to be part of it. Until next time, keep believing, keep building, and keep shining, because the world needs more people just like you.